I was, just reading what people were saying online about best movies, and, people were commenting about the novels.
Yeah.
One of the things someone brought up was Bond is, he's a more nuanced character in the novels. One of the reasons that he is associated with expensive things is not because he became this symbol of elegance and expensive luxury items.
We'll get into that.
The reason he's like that in the novels is because he is aware that British secret agents have very short lifespans.
So he spends lavishly knowing that time is so precious?
Yes, he's all on MI6's dollar, because when he's out in the field, all of expenses are comped. So he spends lavishly while out in the field.
I remember reading
that is why he's associated with expensive things. And then he became this thing is like, oh, well, he craves expensive things or he loves them. It's like,
yeah.
Well, and also, during when he's not out in the field, when he's not out on a case, he is a civil servant in Britain. He's not out in the field all the time.
Yes,
he does not. He's not constantly. It's not like a 2 villain per year thing. It's like when they send him out, and it's like, that's really interesting. There's a very boring side to Bond's life.
Yeah, we know. We only see the action.
Yeah, it's like,
stuff.
Dude, he sits behind a desk most of the year. It's only until they send him out. But anyway, that is my.
Also, I looked it up. Vesper Martini was created by Ian Fleming.
Yeah,
it's gin instead of vermouth. It's gin, vodka, and white wine. So you got 1/3.
Hey, all right.
Yes,
thank you, Kay.
His estate in Jamaica was named GoldenEye, which is
I did know that.
Which is named after a type of bird because he was into ornithology, and he was.
Right. I think he released some works on that.
Yes, he did. Yep. Huh. And the author of his favorite ornithological work or whatever.
We all have one of those.
Of course, yeah. I can't even pick one right now. There's so many. The name, I don't remember the author's name, but that they used the author's name as a code name in
Dino Day.
Yeah. Ugh. So he goes to Cuba posing as an ornithologist there for wild birds, and he says his name is this famous guy's name.
Oh gosh,
yeah. And I was like, that's a cool homage. Too bad that movie sucks.
Yeah. Also, he does not fit that part.
No.
Pierce Brosnan.
No, my favorite ornithological work is that movie Rio, the DreamWorks movie.
I think I'm gonna say Rio too.
No, it sucked.
So what is up, everybody? I am in a good mood today. Why is that, you ask? Well, that's because we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite pieces of media ever. Something very near and dear to my heart. A little game that, by all accounts on paper, should have never succeeded the way it did. It was made by a small, inexperienced team. It was on a console not known whatsoever for the genre, and distributed by a company not known whatsoever for a project of this style. It also went through loads of changes in development. There were technical limitations, financial constraints. Oh, and most of all, it was fucking based on a movie. A movie that, by this time this work of art was released, was already long outdated in the mind of theatergoers. But I think we know what I'm getting at here.
Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie.
Yeah.
Finally, we're doing it.
God, this has been just
long
really
time coming, yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't already guessed, no. It involves spies and guns and Russia.
The Mission Impossible game?
The Born Identity?
Yeah. No, goddamn GoldenEye number 007, a first-person shooter exclusively for the family-friendly Nintendo 64, a product that, when it was announced, barely batted a GoldenEye. Instead, it sold millions, received near-perfect review scores, won endless industry awards celebrating the best of 1997. Even in 2023, it continues to appear on numerous all-time rankings from a considerable amount of respected outlets. Its influences on mechanics and multiplayer are still found in titles being produced as we speak. The cultural importance of it alone practically make it a touchstone of the 90s generation, including beyond just the aroma of video games. Many argue it revitalized the significance of James Bond as a character, especially in the US and Japan. That might seem quaint now, though it certainly wasn't 24 years ago. Standard features of just about every FPS that came after started here. Location damage with motion capture animation, precision aiming, open objectives, responsive AI, silenced weapons and stealth, gadgets, customizable dual wielding, rifles that could fucking zoom, destructible environments, epic 4-person simultaneous split screen. even the option of using more than only one joystick to play it. The list goes on and on. Tons of kick-ass things we take for granted.
I was going to crack a joke. Oh, well, it didn't invent dual analog, but depending upon how you look at it, it's like, ish, yeah.
Can you believe that tiny gray cartridge had 16:9 widescreen support on it? Like, what the fuck?
That was a bizarre. I forgot about rediscovering that option.
The frame rate might have been inconsistent. The controller may have been lousy. But you know what? People didn't care. From basements to dorm rooms to offices, everyone was bitten by the bug. You didn't even have to like shooters, really. GoldenEye transcended that and was its own unique beast, one whose story we are going to tell you fine folks about. And don't worry if you found any of my gushing there annoying. I did choose to relegate it mostly to the intro. Get the bulk of it before we begin. I mean, hey, I love this game. I ain't afraid to shout it. But anyway, this is Hot Button. I'm your clob spraying, remote tossing, laser watch using host Randall Beatrice. Here with fellow 64-bit aficionados, 00 Agent Austin Blakesley.
I'm a Halo guy. Call me Master Chief.
Matthew, I'm Invincible Nudib.
Of course, yes.
All right, I'm done with the jokes.
It's true. I unlocked Invincible Bond.
That's true. And Invisible Bond.
And Invisible Bond.
Let's get into the real shit and just how in the hell this got made and published by the biggest gaming giant of the era. Even looking back on it, the entire recipe for GoldenEye is sort of nuts when you break it down. Before we do start, however, I have to draw attention and give major thanks to our main source of research for this episode, as well as a figure we owe so much to. See, back in July of 2022, an entry in the Boss Fight series of novels, aptly titled GoldenEye 007, was published, documenting the entire history of the game's production, launch, and troubled path to becoming available for later generations to relive again. It was written by Elise Knorr, an associate professor of English at the Regis University in Denver, Colorado. She is also a co-editor of Switchback Books, penned several collections of poetry, such as Mega City Redux, Copper Mother, and Annotated Glass. She even wrote the aforementioned Boss Fights issue on Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yep.
Another fucking staple of my childhood.
Also marking her as the only author on that list. To do it twice. And and she's got a couple other works upcoming. She's still putting out more work.
She's hard at it. And but most importantly for us, she agreed to do an interview with us for our show.
I mean, what do you mean by for us? We're like the world-renowned Hot Button guys. Like
this is a monumental Hot Button first. So Matt here reached out. She was then gracious enough to sit down for an hour with us, discuss her book, of which Matt and I read cover to cover and super enjoyed. It was certainly vital in the investigation of this topic. It's great. We get to hear stories recounted directly from the devs themselves. And the interview was tremendously awesome. She was so goddamn cool, and we will be posting it sometime after this goes out for all of you to listen to. Although for now, what do you guys say we get into the tale of how GoldenEye came to light?
My body is ready.
Obviously, we can't go anywhere without beginning with the developer responsible. I know him, you know him. I'm talking Rare, or as they were initially called, Ultimate Play the Game. Yep. They were founded by brothers Tim and Chris Stamper in their 30s. This back in 1982 out of, bear with me for a sec, Ashby de la Zouch in northwest Leicestershire, England.
I think it's
Leicestershire.
Leicestershire.
Yes.
That's spelled like a...
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Worcestershire sauce.
I apologize.
Yeah. Yep, it's out in the country, too.
Sorry, this was along with their friend John Lathbury and Tim's partner Carol Ward. Other members of the Stamper family would provide their assistance as well.
Yes.
But Tim and Chris were at the center of it. They both came from arcade backgrounds, although each already had a strong passion for tech. Chris often tinkered with electronics as a youngin' and built his own computer in college, getting him a nice programming gig even before graduating. Meanwhile, Tim's focus was more on the artistic side, with his primary interest being graphic design. The duo quickly went from the trade of coin-op conversion at their old job at Ashby to creating their own original software, landing almost immediate success with their 2D run-and-shoot platformer, Jetpack.
It was
available on Rail Replay.
Yes, I was gonna say it's like if you wanted to take a good look at Rare's heritage, it is.
Oh, it's perfect for all this.
I think you probably have brought up this game more than once, but Rare Replay. Minus GoldenEye, which is not on there for...
it is kind of now, yeah.
You know what? That's a good point. Originally,
sort of,
for rights reasons that Randy I'm sure has plenty of info. It's like if you're interested, it's like you can just go through them. It's like they have a bunch of info on
little docs, like little documentaries.
Yeah, it's like
featurettes.
It's like it's not just in like an emulation of the game. It's like they provide all this background info in interviews. So it's just like
it's real cool and probably like comparable to on Game of the Year when we discussed Atari 50. Maybe not that in depth, but the presentation.
It's one of those compilations that's like it's done with love. It's not just a bunch of ROMs loaded up onto a game. It's like they put a lot of
which is what those compilations used to be.
Yeah, essentially Namco Museum. It was really just a boring ass museum, and you like. They don't even let you get to the ROMs quickly. You have to go up to these separate rooms with them.
They didn't even fix the controls. They just mapped it to whatever.
Mapped it to, yeah. Which I think Chris made the joke. It's like, what else can Atari really do besides just release compilations at this point? And it's like,
they can make speaker hats and open up hotels
and sell remasters on original 2600 cards for $300 for 10 of them or whatever.
Yeah. No, it was $1,000 for 10 of them, $100 a pop, and it's like it's not even like the most hard to find Atari games. I own like at least half of those, and it's like you can just go down to the store and buy, and they're
and NFTs as well.
And NFTs, yeah.
So Jetpack was this is for the 16K Spectrum, May 1983. It sold around 300,000 copies, a wild feat. Chris stated that the platform was targeted due to their smaller size and sheer volume of units publicly out there. Not that this was without tons of hard work. The pair invested insane hours every day over the course of 3 years, skipping only Christmas in order to bring Jetpack to completion. Thankfully, their efforts didn't go unnoticed, with profits raking in excess of £1 million. This then led to further titles, Trans Am with a Z and Cookie, after they would upgrade to the ZX, granting them a whopping $48K at their disposal. Yeah.
Wow.
The games just then kept coming. A Tick Attack, Saber Wolf, a sequel to their debut with Lunar Jetman, and Night Lore.
The Saber Wolf was like a big thing for them because it's like Saber Wolf became the main character, and like it was either a trilogy or like a tetralogy of games that were all like linked together.
Yeah,
and
they didn't get to release them all though, right?
I think what happened was it was like they came out with 3 of them, and there was a planned 4th game that was going to finish up all of it, but I don't think they finished it, and so I think it's something's weird with it. It's unreleased, but it's like they're all linked together. There's like codes you can get in the previous game that link to the next games or whatever.
That's an ambitious idea.
I thought it was good, and then I mean, Saber Wolf is like, who the fuck knows who Saber Wolf is anymore?
Night Lore was cited by Edge magazine a decade later for its significant and revolutionizing isometric visuals to appear 3D.
I think that's the second game in the series.
Yeah, and again, check out Rare Replay if you're curious of these. I think, I'm not sure which ones of those are in there. A Tick Attack is, and Lunar Jetman definitely is.
Saber Wolf, he makes a brief cameo in Banjo-Tooie.
What?
Yes, as a side character that, like, you know, gives you a mission to go.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
Wait, what's game Saber Wolf from?
The game's called Saber Wolf.
Saber Wolf and the Night Lore. Yeah, it's a guy. He's in a little explorer hat with like a.
Because there's a character in Killer Instinct called Saber Wolf, and that's also made by Rare.
Shit.
Yes, that is actually named after that character.
I don't think I ever connected those dots. Yeah. So Ultimate continued to bask in their glory right out the gate. They won the prestigious Gold Joystick Award for Best Software House in 1983 and 1984. Their knowledge in hardware, gameplay design, and code writing stood above their competitors, still using BASIC. The Z80 enabled their stuff to run way faster. This and save on extra memory.
A whole whopping 64K back then.
Also, they soon made the decision to increase the MSRP of their products from $550 to £995 to try and combat the loss from consumer sharing or customers trading around.
What's that in freedom dollars?
I'm actually not sure. Or without inflation. But shockingly, this didn't dissuade their supporters. In fact, Ultimate's fan base was so dedicated that they would receive an average of 60 letters a day through the mail, causing them to have to hire someone strictly to manage it. We'll get there eventually, right? Right, boys?
Yep. We get a lot of fan mail. I just burn it all. Keeps the house warm.
What if there's money in there? So going into 85, rumors were circulating of a buyout by Ocean. However, These were thwarted once it was revealed that the Stampers had sold the company and their catalog to U.S. Gold, a nearby distributor in Witten, Birmingham, who stuck with the Ultimate brand, and then continued to release titles that didn't quite strike the same level of acclaim as to when it was under the previous regime. Their community was stunned by this. Like, how could they suddenly vanish with so much to offer? Well, the truth is that this was all part of their plan. The brothers didn't want their creativity to be stifled, especially with the ambitiousness growing and growing. So as the purchase was getting finalized, Tim and Chris were secretly relocating to the middle of nowhere English countryside in, how did you pronounce this? I know it's in the books. Twycross?
Oh, I think spell it. Is it TWY?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Twycross.
Twycross.
I believe so. I mean, that's what we're going
said
with.
Phonetically. All right.
It's the same language. The British are just a silly people.
Listen. If it's like Twycross in English, we just invented the American pronunciation. Okay. Yeah.
And this was to set up a subsidiary named Rare Designs of the Future, or Rare for short. A word they discreetly snuck into a few of their in-game credits.
You know, guys, it was still the 80s. Not every game company name was copyrighted. You didn't need to, you could have just stuck with, Ultimate and Rare, and no one had those names yet.
Not yet. So when does the big N enter the fray? Well, back in 1983, a business associate of theirs had sent them an imported Famicom, the Japanese NES for all you kids listening. And this thing was hella advanced at that time, so they were encouraged to pry into it a bit. Hesitation sat with them, though, as Nintendo hadn't shown much enthusiasm in attracting the Western market yet. The majority of British devs were way more drawn to the upcoming wave of 16-bit PCs like the Atari ST and Commodore Amiga. Abandoning the locally popular Spectrum for this would be a huge risk. Regardless, they were just too enamored with the machine. Problem was, the Mario guys would deny any request from them to study their code. This meant Chris had to spend 8 months reverse engineering it himself.
That is so. I mean, just to cut in here, something that's charming about reading about old game development, and especially with the book, is just how experimental old game development was. It's they got their hands on a new piece of hardware, and then suddenly their entire business model just changed. They're like, oh, we're
right,
and it's just
nowadays it's all
it's all planned out, and it's just they got this new piece of hardware. They're like, this is better. Fuck this old one. And it's and they're just enamored by it.
And that could make you break you if you gamble wrong.
So that's kind of also something they bring up in the book. You need to have room to fail. If you're so risk averse that one single thing will end you, it's nothing's going to change. You're just going to keep doing what works.
Right, but then there's the other side of the coin, which is game development was harder, more specialized back then, but it also moved a lot faster.
I mean,
that's true.
Budgets were low. You could make a game with 1 or 2 people, and you could experiment in a way that you can't now because you got to build a physics engine and then a lighting engine, and then you got to implement gameplay mechanics, and then you have to put in models and textures, and then you got to get to that point, and you're like, actually, this combat's not that great. And they're like, we already spent $100 million, ship it.
All right, figure out how to monetize it.
I mean,
put a battle pass in.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years can go by, and it's the hardware doesn't change much from year to year now. I've been playing a lot of retro games, and I'm just this game was made in 91, and this game was made in 99, and it's just they're just completely
all the different worlds.
Even a separation of 2 years is just
and this is back when software was hyper specialized for the hardware. So this is when the two of them were finally able to secure a meeting with then Nintendo of America president Minoru Arakawa. Rare became the very first company outside Japan to pitch them on projects and succeed. Arakawa was so impressed at what they had done on their demos, particularly the presentation for Slalom, a downhill skiing game, that they formally gave them the license and capital to collaborate with them as freelancers, the start of the beautiful relationship that would lead to GoldenEye 10 years later. They now had the cash, a headquarters inside a Manor Village farmhouse, and a second office based in Miami, Florida. Also, the revamped Nintendo Entertainment System was finding itself to shelves across the globe, taking the gaming scene into unprecedented heights, and they drove straight in with it. Staffing up, between 86 and 1991, Rare had produced 60 games for the NES and Game Boy. They'd signed deals with Trade West, EA, Sega, previous hot button subject Acclaim, Mindscape, GameTech. The possibilities were endless. They also obtained rights to various IP for adaptations, including Spider-Man, Jeopardy, Sesame Street, the WWF, Double Dare, Beetlejuice, Wheel of Fortune, Nightmare on Elm Street, Hollywood Squares, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the greatest noir film ever. And the variety was evident here too. There were platformers, racing games, sports games, fucking a tarot card reading simulator. Not only that, but their contributions to ports was a key priority as well. Titles once hosted exclusively on the PC or in arcades were now arriving to the NES's expanding library. Narc, Double Dragon, Sid Meier's Pirates, goddamn Marble Madness. And none of this slowed their output on fresh ideas either. You had RC Pro-Am, Snake, Rattle and Roll, Cobra Triangle. Cobra Triangle, which rules.
Which is a great game.
Yeah.
Did you mention Battletoads?
Battletoads was enormous for them.
Battletoads was great.
And Cobra Triangle kind of started too. But Battletoads really took it to the where they would mix different genres and lots of technological achievements, such as like expanding of music tracks and parallax scrolling.
Yep.
A method taken from the Bros examination of Japanese design discovery.
Yeah, that's also another thing is how much they were able to look at what others were doing and like be like, let me take that and expand upon it. It was the same thing with Mario 64. It's like Banjo-Kazooie. They took a lot of inspiration from Mario for GoldenEye 2, and it's like,
we'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, which is I think really creative. It's just like, hey, these guys did this. What can we do with it?
If it's something you're gonna pull from,
yeah,
that should be it. By the early 90s, Nintendo was just fucking dominating every region in terms of video games, and having Rare by their side was fundamental to this. The thirst for innovation kept driving them, although the NES's potential was hitting its limit. So with the generation coming to its inevitable sunset, the studio had more than established themselves as Nintendo's pride and joy, but they were ready for a bolder move. Talking another dimension. 3D. Kinda.
Yeah, no, I mean, kinda. What was their debut 3D?
So they pulled together the money made throughout those years and purchased a handful of workstations from the largest bank of expensive silicon graphics in Britain. The same computers used to build the cutting-edge CGI in Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. Double whammy right there.
I worked on SGI machines.
Oh, yeah?
Nice.
And Rare's version of these concepts was labeled Advanced Computer Modeling, TMTM.
TMT.
It incorporated performance suit capture, light sourcing, and the inclusion of photorealistic assets above anything the industry had witnessed before. Plus, you know what else was on the horizon that could take advantage of these breakthroughs? The Super Nintendo Entertainment System. One of the top tier home gaming consoles to ever grace our living rooms.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, or in my case, basement. Well, probably bedrooms for... That's it.
Yeah, no.
You were a basement kid too, like me. Right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, we
spent a lot of time in both of our basements.
I know. we still use that so much that it's like when the power supply broke, we went out and bought another one. And I have this. Do you have
the 101? Like
I do, and on top of that, I just spent a lot of time with the SNES Mini, SNES Classic.
Yeah.
Beating Final Fantasy 6/3 in North America.
When I finally, when my original SNES finally called it quits, I got the 101, which is a neat little device, but I hate the fact that there's no power light. You can't tell when it's on.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean,
it drives me bonkers.
I'm just happy about the fact that it's just like, that was a top loading system. That because the NES, the front loading was just like not doing anybody favors. So
look cool though.
Yeah, it looked,
and it was easier to put horizontally on a shelf.
Yeah, but it caused a lot of problems because without gravity, the cartridges would slide out, which is why the system didn't always start up properly.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, they even tried doing it with like the push down thing to make sure that the wedge the pins against each other, and it's like that.
Still
right, because the Famicom was top loading.
It was.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I never thought about that, but you're right. One of the things annoying about the SNES and the Nintendo 64 was that couldn't put anything on top of it. But the NES, you're right. It's like you can stack.
Nowadays you can just.
And the GameCube is top loading too. So all of my Nintendo consoles were sitting on top of the other ones. Like the GameCube sat on top of the PlayStation 2.
Well, don't worry. Now the Switch needs like fucking 3 feet of clearance to put anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
You can technically balance a Xbox Series X on top of PlayStation 5 and then put a Switch on top of that. If you want to block all of the airflow from the two ones that need it.
So upon showing a second demonstration to Nintendo execs, this for a boxing minigame, one that would utilize their updated SGI tech. They were indeed impressed, considering developer kits couldn't render powerful effects like those until this process was programmed. In tune, the gaming megacorp hastily acquired a 25% stake in the company for $39.5 million.
That's it. That's
Well,
39.5 million what? Pounds, dollars, yen?
This is dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
A Japanese company purchased a 25% stake in a British company
with
with American dollars. I love the economy.
Gradually increasing the number to 49%, thus making them a full-blown second party for them. Rare could maintain autonomous operation, greenlighting and designing software, while Nintendo would stay hands-off of the creative aspects. The Stampers' 51% allowed them to ground themselves as independent.
Wow. One of the themes that we, constantly return to on this show is just like, in any case where it's like a team has more autonomy and creative freedom, miracles happen. It's like in almost every case of like a brand like losing popularity or diminishing, like you can literally just dig through it and just spot the case of greed. Just like it's where it's like, I was just thinking about, it's like how many companies, like they have this really well-established brand and everybody loves it. And it's like, people are like, there's a big fan community. And then it's like, they get so big that they get a board of directors, and the board of directors is like, how can we squeeze every ounce of money out of this brand? And it's just, it's literally, it's killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. It's like, you are being so greedy. Like, you are like sitting on this very popular brand or IP or series, and you kill it by trying to cut open the goose and being like, let's get more of the gold from inside. It's like
a good thing that never happened to Rare. Right? Right, guys?
Well, we got a treat in store for you with this series. Yeah.
They're still killing it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course. I play their games all the time.
Yeah, you bust out that Kinect and you're like, whew, I need to see me some
some of this.
There's a lot of companies that Nintendo tried that tactic with, and then other people came along and fucked them up.
I was just thinking about with Bethesda, when they tried to monetize the modding community. It's like, we
covered that.
It's like, did no executive on the board step back and think, you are killing the goose that laid the golden eggs? People love our games because of the free modding scene, and they make them better, and you're going to sit there and think, how can we squeeze money out of this?
Whenever any instances like that happen, there's at least like maybe one or a couple people that are like, and then,
Yeah, it's like those voices just get stifled, because at the end of the day, it's like, when a bunch of people make a decision, the bottom line is what counts, and so of course the bad decisions are the ones that pass, No one thinks it through.
Ironic.
Yeah.
So during this period, the team's trademark would evolve into Rareware, and this was also around the moment their general philosophy changed. Rather than leaping to get as many titles out the door as possible, now things would aim for quality over quantity and give undivided attention to specific requests.
Still more quantity than most, too. That's the craziest part about this. They went from making like 60 games in like 5 years to like
a third of the N64's
library. But it's still like, I don't want to spoil it, but like GoldenEye, Blast Corps, Banjo-Kazooie, Killer Instinct.
Oh yeah, they were, and it's
Death Force Gemini.
And I'm sure
Perfect Dark and Conquer. Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll cover this later, but it's like, I discovered, I would say fairly recently, that was because of the siloed approach that you're probably going to talk to, where it's like, it wasn't just one development team doing that. It was siloed development teams.
It's all under the Rare umbrella, but it was much more sanctioned than
It's a very independent mindset, because there's a couple companies now that work like that. Double Fine comes to mind.
Yeah,
there you go.
Where it's like they do their own internal game jams, and then they just like splinter off into separate teams and work on games.
Yeah, and I think that's like, rightly so. Double Fine is considered a very fine publisher still.
For now, though, enter Donkey Kong Country. Wishing to advertise the capabilities of what their hotly anticipated and well-performing Super SNES was packing, combined with the encroaching fears of the Sega Saturn and PlayStation, the Big N came to the conclusion of giving Rareware permissions to access their entire back collection of characters for them to select from for their largest venture yet. The crew picked our favorite gorilla villain, turned him into a hero, gave him a sidekick, and boom, the DK Country franchise was born.
Yep. Not only that, but I recently found out that in the intro where Donkey Kong blows up Cranky Kong.
Yeah, they canonically made because he's the original.
He's the original, and he's playing on a gramophone the song that plays in Donkey Kong Classics.
Oh yeah,
from
yeah.
the NES, which I just found out a couple weeks ago. In my mind I was like, that's where that song comes from.
I couldn't remember if it was that or 94, but I guess it started in.
I am positive it's because I
believe it.
I just played it on your console.
Right.
And I heard it. I was like, yep. So that was
Jam.
really cool. And you got me that game. I'm really proud of it.
And Donkey Kong 94, fucking shreds.
Yeah,
no,
but it was a really good idea to give Donkey Kong to Rare because they ended up making the best Donkey Kong game out of all.
I was gonna say,
no, I know what he's hitting at.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like compared to the arcade game. Never mind. different.
I am talking about compared to the arcade game. You just don't know what's Rare Donkey Kong game.
All right, so of course there's much more to it than that. But hey, this is supposed to be a GoldenEye episode. To be brief, they brought on 20 people to make it. Donkey Kong Country, I mean, it took 18 months total. Their longest cycle yet. It earned exemplary reviews, became the third best-selling SNES release at over 9 million cartridges sold.
Whoa, that's actually super impressive.
That's ranked first if you discount bundles, because Mario World was like
I was gonna say what's second. I know Mario World's one.
Mario Kart, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Down the road, it spawned 2 rad follow-ups, multiple spin-offs. Nobody had seen a platformer with that look in 1994.
Yeah.
It was crazy. That's what I meant when I said 3D. Like, it's 3D, but not
I think,
3D.
I think also they were able to make those 3D sprites from that, either the SGI. It's like they wanted to take advantage of that. That's like the ability to animate in 3D, and I think that helped
they
them.
also use that for Killer Instinct.
That they do, very much.
Yeah.
It was either that or the TM computer, or whatever you had mentioned before.
The one that has a very generic sounding name.
Yeah.
By 95, the Rare Squad had grown from 84 employees to 100. And I believe this was when that 25% stake I brought up was boosted to 49. I'm not 100% sure. There was a lot of confidence in Donkey Kong. They promoted the hell out of it, so it made sense. Alongside that, as Austin brought up, the CG fighter Killer Instinct was birthed into arcades through custom cabinets that same year, with code distribution handled by Midway. This being another win for them, and the ongoing friendship with Nintendo. They were like 2 peas in a pod, honestly.
A real quick question: the Killer Instinct arcade cabinet. That was the one where it screamed Ultra Combo in your face.
Yeah.
That is. I can.
Does it not do that in gold on the N64?
No, it does.
Better.
But it's like I just like when someone brings it up, I can still hear the voice in my head.
Well, former guest of the show, I think Andrew has mentioned that was like a deliberate choice to attract people to the.
The announcer is also one of the guys at Rare who created or helped create Killer Instinct, and they specifically there's a documentary. To reference, you should watch it. No, it's Hold Back to Block.
Okay.
They do like fighting game documentaries. Phenomenal documentary about the remake of Killer Instinct because that guy worked with them again to do the voice again.
Awesome.
And they specifically made it scream that to be louder than Mortal Kombat to get people to come over to the Killer Instinct machine.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's these old tactics,
I'm telling you, man, it's just wild. It's just the Wild West of just like whatever works.
What if we were louder? So now that the stage is constructed, let's jump into our main meat. A continent away from our wonderful Brits, an unlikely agreement was being made. Nintendo CEO Hiroshi Yamauchi had negotiated the licensing rights to adapt the then still in pre-production 007 film known as, quote, Bond 17 into a playable video game. Instantly, the publisher's bigwigs knew who to trust with the endeavor. I mean, who better else for the task than an outfit starring the UK's most celebrated cultural icon? Funnily enough, however,
Queen Elizabeth.
when Rare's upper management was approached, their response essentially was, nah. The Brothers Stamp were wary of how a movie-to-game adaptation could restrict their freedom. And they just got distance from that shit. It was time for more original properties to get their chance.
Didn't they also do the Who Framed Roger Rabbit game?
This was beyond that.
That's what I was going to say. They were like, they did it in the past, and now they're like,
exactly.
Nah.
They're like, you want to go back? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Bear in mind, I'm fairly sure it's like there were James Bond games before this.
Yeah,
but
I got you one.
Yeah, you did. It's like I'm fairly sure the most popular one that came out before GoldenEye remained James Pond Jr. Yeah, fish out of water or whatever. No, it's like
I think it's got a punnier name than that.
Oh yeah, it does have a yes. It was So it was like yeah. Those the Bond titles like. There was plenty of potential there, and they just they were not good.
And they were happy with their trajectory for KI and Blast Corps. They were pleased with their quaint remote office. A James Bond project could shake that vibe. GoldenEye's composer Grant Kirkhope later remarked that despite the studio reaching the status of an internal powerhouse, it also was at its heart a family. A family living in an isolated town, removed from the hustle and bustle of major cities or tech hubs.
Yeah.
The Stampers' mom cooked in the company kitchen. Their dad drove employees to and from the airport.
Yeah.
Their sister balanced the wages. Even their older brother served as a groundskeeper.
That's actually
so adorable.
Yeah, that last job is a lot more involved than just baking and driving. It's like she just like,
hey, which straw did she draw?
Yeah, really. Mom, you cook. Dad, you drive.
Well,
sis, our finances are a wreck. Just slaps down a bunch of folders. Get cracking.
Depends how many people you're cooking for and how big the grounds are.
Yeah,
you know
I suppose that's
fair
true.
enough.
Yeah.
Tim and Chris wanted to remain actual developers on the games too, in addition to keeping the lights on. Post a bit of persuasion, put a pin in that, the pair would change their minds. After all, they had the creative control, they had the finances, they had the staff. They're going to give it what they got. But before we get into the individuals who came aboard the ship, let's first dissect the IP as a whole. It's important to gauge just where society was at with our suave martini-drinking secret agent in the mid-90s. James Bond, the fictional character, was brought to existence by British journalist, novelist, World War II veteran Ian Fleming in 1953, who we mentioned in the intro. He was always the protagonist and working with an MI5 stand-in called MI6.
MI6,
yeah. His exploits were featured in a dozen loosely connected books and 2 short story compilations published into the 60s. This starting with Casino Royale.
Casino Royale.
File that, by the way, under things that I learned way too late in life, that MI6 wasn't real.
It is like it's like way too close.
Because
also
like,
the FBI and the KGB exist in
that's what I was gonna say, like
the Bond lore.
The FBI, that like when like the Bourne stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Mission Impossible is kind of like a Bond thing, and that's fake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what they're.
It's IMF.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean. Yeah, I also thought, it's numbered, because of course the British would number their intelligence agencies. And like MI5 is like the kind of secret, and then MI6 is
the implication is that's the super secret.
Yeah, and then like MI1 is like they do the taxes.
Even though in the film their building is huge in the middle of London.
In the middle of London, it's just like real, and on the river too. It's like riverfront property.
Yeah, they're just like. They're like, the CIA, the KGB, the FBI, and then the fake one.
And then they own a backup headquarters that's a castle in Scotland.
That's right.
Yeah, no, but you're right. It's like they didn't name it like the CIB instead of the CIA. It's like it's fine with. Yeah, maybe he figured since he wasn't a U.S. citizen, he was like safe from like any sort of like.
Man, we love acronyms over here. I'll tell you what. FDA.
Yeah.
The ATF.
The ATF's come up that many times in this podcast?
They've come up before.
Yeah, I think so.
No, they definitely came up.
Did Waco was like that get discussed?
I know the ATF specifically, I believe, came up in the CSGO episode, maybe. And also, for sure, the Columbine episode.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, you're right.
All right.
that checks.
Yo, you should just start a checklist of all the agencies you need to hit.
Yeah.
There's few. The list would be smaller than the ones we haven't.
Yeah.
So the unexpected popularity led to dozens of motion pictures, with Dr. No premiering in 1962.
Yes.
As of today, 25 official, 2 non-official, non-canonical. I don't know. They were primarily distributed by Eon and MGM, later Sony. The face of Bond being recast as the March of Aging treks on. It, of course, began with the legendarily smooth Sean Connery, rip.
Yeah.
Then a single stint from George Lazenby, transitioning into the camp area with Roger Moore, rip again. And then saw an efficient and raw Timothy Dalton, who was underrated, in my opinion,
I love Timothy Dalton as Bond.
Yeah.
I think he of all of those characters, I feel like he encapsulated that. It's like he still has a bit of a charm to him, but is mostly very like dark and jaded. He's all very much mission focused, and it's like that seems like how a secret agent would act.
And he only took the shoes twice. It's a tragedy.
Well, that was just a spoiler alert. GoldenEye is not the first James Bond asset that has encountered rights issues.
Yes.
The Timothy Dalton contract was one of them, and the reason those spin-offs exist were also fights over rights to the movie, rights to who could produce a movie. It's one of those series that everybody like just wants to like get a piece of.
Fucking Broccoli's, man.
Yeah, you know
what I mean?
That's true, yeah. And it's Barbara Broccoli now, right?
Yeah.
So then stepped in the sleek Pierce Brosnan for the turn of the millennia.
Yep.
Then we'll return him, don't worry. Well, finally then going complete reinvention with the gritty modern reboot championed by one only Daniel Craig. No news yet on who's next, but it's incredibly fascinating. As somebody, me and you, Matt, who have been revisiting them, that it's like to really see the numerous ways these productions and stories have truly reflected their times, like both geopolitically and socially.
And socially, and
we could speak on just that alone.
And,
for hours.
I just started. I was actually reading Casino Royale, but then you gave me Lisa's book, but I took a crack at it. Actually, a very, very quick read, in my opinion. Like, you can get through it, and it's free online. And I thought it was fascinating, because it's like, it was like you get to see this character fleshed out in the novels, and he's distinct enough that it's like, he's a very, I think he's a, like, a interesting.
Smart change, though, for the movie to switch it from Bacharach to Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to play it.
No one knows how to
and they played in the GoldenEye
I learned it.
Isn't it? It's like a kind of like a
blackjack,
solitaire blackjack. Yeah, that's
it's blackjack with more math, is what it is. It has something to do with
gross.
like nines, like your number has to end in 9. I don't know. It's dumb.
Yeah, which begs the question, like, how did all those chain smoking, hard drinking gamblers like how are they
do so much math?
Dude? Yeah, after a couple martinis deep, who was sitting there thinking about like the odds? You were just probably just rolling at that point.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said there are 25 movies?
Yes.
How many books are there? Have they done all the books?
They have done all the books.
They have done all the books.
And in fact, Randy will probably talk about this, but GoldenEye was the first one that was actually not, first of all, it was not named after a novel, and I think was it the first one also not based on a novel?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
correct.
no.
Oh, okay.
It's like, they got
although they went back, though, because like Quantum of Solace and Spectre were novels, but like they would a lot of times for the movies, though, they would pull elements from some after they told all those stories, and would kind of like because they would have to modernize and update them.
I've seen 5 James Bond, 6 James Bond movies.
You need to amend this. That's
the one that we watched with all 3 of us.
Was it Live and Let Die?
That was the blaxploitation.
Right?
Yeah. Live and Let Die.
That was
Live and Let Die, and then I saw GoldenEye, and then I saw the Ice Hotel one.
That's Die Another Day.
Die Another Day, and then I saw Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and then the one after Quantum of Solace.
That was
Spectre.
That was Spectre.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the Komodo dragons they didn't do.
Or no, that was Skyfall.
Oh yeah,
Skyfall. Right, I saw Skyfall with the Komodo dragons that were really poorly CGI'd, and then I stopped there.
You missed a lot from the old,
it's
who was in Live and Let Die? Is that
that's Roger Moore.
Roger Moore.
That's Roger Moore.
So you haven't seen like any of the Connery
I haven't
ones?
seen any of the Connery ones.
I think you would enjoy the Dalton ones.
I think you would enjoy the Dalton ones, and I honestly, my favorites have been some of the later Roger Moore ones have also been really. I mean, Roger Moore was definitely aging, but
he was it's a shame because A View to a Kill is a pretty slick movie, but it's just not like.
I also saw Half of the World Is Not Enough on cable.
That is that is actually I think
I like World Is Not Enough.
World Not Enough I think is really good.
You would probably find aspects of Die Another Day, or no, not Die Another Day. Tomorrow Never Dies hilarious because the villains are just. Fucking Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak.
The villain is really just Steve Jobs, a stand-in for Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and the primary goal is they want to create wars and then print
by controlling the newspapers.
They want to create wars so that they know the headlines ahead of time, and that's how they're going to control the world. It's it was making a statement about the power of the media at the time, but it was just like
it became very dated in a way that GoldenEye still isn't like it. Michelle Yeoh though, hey,
yeah, no, I thought it was a fun movie. I think it's just like
it's a weird one.
It's a weird set of stakes, where it's just like what is it like? What's his evil plan to control the world? The newspapers. It's like it feels a little bit off. It feels a little bit I don't know.
GoldenEye is the best one that I've seen.
GoldenEye's dope.
GoldenEye is
so good.
It's Casino and GoldenEye.
Yeah, I think it's very closely tied between Casino and GoldenEye.
I do like the torture scene in Casino Royale. Isn't that the one where he gets tortured?
Matt said that's right out of the book.
Yeah, right from the book.
Quote,
where they're like shocking his nuts.
They're hitting him with
a carpet beater. Yeah, it's a carpet beater, and and that's. I was like stunned. That is what I will say is when going through these novels and checking them against the movies, I was stunned by, and it was, I think, 16 novels, because it was 16 movies that covered it, how faithful they stay to the plot of those novels. I read it. It's like the martini was real. Except Le Chiffre in Casino Royale. In the movie, he tries to fund terrorism by shorting that airline and blowing that. In the novel, he invested his money in a bunch of brothels in France, and that year prostitution became illegal in France, and that's how he lost his investment. And that is why that's like the one change, is that he invested in brothels instead of an airline company. And I was like, hey,
Can we go back to You Only Live Twice yet? Thunderball, though.
Thunderball was very. I thought it was very cinematic. The original Sean Connery movies are, I think, like you said, they're cinematic.
Well, there's kind of an elegance and sort of prestige to them, and then like the rise of the big blockbuster is how you got stuff like Moonraker and but it's like
that was also
there's still value in all of them somewhere.
Yeah,
except for Die Another Day.
The one thing too is that it's funny because like those are like the Suave era is very much like cinematic and serious stakes. But that is the era of, was it Smersh or Spectre and Blofeld, who was invented for the movies, because in the novels, all these villains that he fights, they're just kind of branches of the NKVD, the Soviet, or the KGB or whatever. And then I think in the movies, they were like, well, we kind of want to give him a face to this evil. Because if he's just fighting the Soviet Union,
face with this big scar in it.
Yeah, it's like, well, if he's just fighting against the Soviet Union, it's like Bond can't win unless the Soviet Union goes down, which means, it's like they wanted to personalize this. It's like they're, instead of being captains of, Soviet intelligence, they're all captains to Blofeld. But anyway, that was my nerd rant.
It goes without saying that just how massive this series was and is. With the movies grossing $7 billion globally.
Like the Harry Potter of the 60s, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the reception can vary, though its high points have managed to live in the zeitgeist far beyond Fleming's death and are often referenced in many of the industry's rankings of the most beloved, celebrated, cinema. Only the future will tell if Bond ever gets surpassed by, Star Wars or Marvel or whatever in terms of longevity. But
I think in terms
ship ain't slowing down.
To put a final note on the legacy of the movies and the novels, it's just like I really do feel like it's still popular, and also it's like it is definitely one of those characters that is like it has entered the cultural zeitgeist for sure. It's like Sherlock Holmes or like anything that's been around for long enough, it just enters the cultural subconscious. And so it's like I think it's like as long as there's people to produce the movies, I think they ain't going
anywhere.
It's also set up perfectly because like Marvel and all those they have like in order to continue them. Like I was reading an article. This is a tangent a little bit, but I was reading an article that Warner Brothers is trying to get Peter Jackson back to do more Lord of the Rings stuff. But like Lord of the Rings was 4 books that they stretched into 6 movies, and then he wrote the Silmarillion, and now they're trying to like
and I
milk
think
that for as much as it's worth.
I'm telling you, man, dude, just look for the greed. Like who's trying to squeeze money out of it?
Yeah, but it's like the lead actor can die and they can continue because they've done it before, and They could just remake the books.
Of course. Yeah,
They could just keep going forever and ever. And
But
he's such a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
The only problem they're going to have is eventually Ian Fleming's works are going to have to go into the public domain, so that's going to be an issue. But
So actually, that is actually a brilliant point. They are doing a republication of his entire set of novels for the 70th anniversary or something of his first thing. So there's
how many years is the?
God, I mean, if he started writing them right after World War II, it would be
Well, it was 53, but I didn't know like how long.
So it would be
what is?
I looked this up recently, and I believe Disney changed.
They did, yeah. We were discussing this
because
in Discord
it was supposed to be.
Gonna re-up the.
It used to be like 70. It was like 50 years after the first publication, and then they stretched it to 70, and then they realized that they get more time out of it, and I think now it's like 80 years after the death of the original creator. So I know Mickey Mouse's thing is officially up in like 2040 something, 2045, because Walt Disney died in.
Winnie the Pooh's out there.
It's 80 years after the death of the original creator.
Yes.
And he died in what, the 70s, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's
so did
like,
Fleming.
So we're not going to, so it's going to be like the 20.
Oh, no, I guess it would be 70 years, yeah, because he died in the 70s and it's up in 2040.
It's okay, there you go.
So, yeah.
So there you go. So we're eventually.
They got some time to figure this out.
Yeah. When did Ian Fleming die?
That's
70s as well.
70s, I think. Yeah.
Okay,
so it's like
it'll be around the same time.
It'll be around the, yeah.
But I think I mixed it up in my head when I said Sleek is Living Daylights. That movie's fucking cool.
Living Daylights, so it's like, ready? There were 5 movies directed by the same guy. He did the 2 Dalton movies and the last 3 Roger Moore movies.
Yeah.
And I mean, various aspects of, like, first of all, Living Daylights is so sleek and is action packed. And, there are various parts of those movies that, they're different. I can comment on different things, but the one thing I have to say is they're all beautifully shot. Okay.
A lot of Bond movies would share, if a director did one, they would usually do like a bunch, and they each had their own like identity.
Yeah, and it's like the one thing is that he did very well, I think, is that his cinematography and when you look at it, you can see a distinct break between the old Roger Moore movies and then this very like high quality, well shot, well framed, and it's like you just
and
watch
like pushing like stunt work forward and
that was that's it. All right,
large set pieces.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we got to stop talking about the movies
So
now.
obviously, this success led to comics, toys, and even video games pre GoldenEye, as Matt said, but none of note. But they're out there. So fast forwarding back to 1995, what did 007 mean to the world then? Well, I'm a defender of it, personally, but the brutally bloody License to Kill in 1989 left audiences a tad divided on what they demanded from the decades-old spy and his adventures. Some were burdened by nostalgia, yearning for the, as we said, the elegance of Connery's reign. Connery's reign. We're leaving that in.
Yeah.
Others were outright fatigued by the seemingly never-ending entries and craved something new.
Yeah.
Or hey, maybe the rise of 80s action blockbusters just caused theater goers to gravitate away into more offbeat ideas.
I think Hollywood out blockbustered and out action.
I know once Jurassic Park happened and like that broke, like, everyone's like.
Yeah, I mean, even like the Spielberg movies of the 80s, I think people were like, okay, we can get our
post Indiana Jones now.
Yeah, we can get our action, our story, and our amazing set pieces. Like, there's other options out there. Bond was no longer the leader of it's like they're like Jurassic Park, and it's like all its weird gadgetry. It's like the gadgetry used to be like a huge pull for people who wanted to see all the weird.
Now every movie's got gadgets.
It's like you can just invent one for.
One element that is for certain though is that budgets were ballooning, and and this is with the pursuit of grander special effects, and 007 wasn't pulling in the box office bucks that he once was. There were a myriad of factors. But it was decided that James would hang up his tux and take a brief vacation. That was until the 6-year hiatus ceased, during of which Dalton's contract has expired, like you said. And Irish actor Mr. Brosnan was chosen to reignite the franchise. Yep. This, and with, as we alluded to, an entirely original screenplay, a first for the brand. All it needed was a companion piece to hook in the nerds. Hopping back within the walls of Rareware, we're going to introduce Matt Hollis into the roster of our lovable squad. He was a relatively new hire, snatched out of college for his programming ability. Described by his peers to be infectiously enthusiastic and humorous. He savored building things in his youth, Legos, sandcastles. That's just cool. Then discovering computers as he got older, which altered the trajectory of his life forever.
Yeah.
Already, he was a follower of Rare's work, being a fan of Knight lore. In school, he had special access to their Acorn BBC Micro PC, which came with a manual sporting a diagram of the circuit schematic, leading him to try his hand at the craft of making games rather than only playing them.
Yeah.
By age 16, he had developed between 20 and 40 of his own. A few were published in magazines, while others were available elsewhere. Supposedly, he was one of many teen coding enthusiasts that was a result of a boom in the 80s across Britain from a nationwide initiative program on computer literacy and sponsored by the BBC.
Yeah, and this is back when also you did not need a thick portfolio to just say like, hey, I want to work on video games.
No, you
Let's
did
see who's hiring. You could basically just be like, yeah, it's like what program experience? Yeah, I used to make a couple games on BASIC on my Commodore. All right, you're better than the rest of the team. Let's go.
He then studied at Cambridge University, partaking in the country's first classes in computer science. Upon joining the crew, he spent his initial year in the Killer Instinct team. He relished in getting to use their SG systems, learning all about the hardware. Also, he's a Tetris fanatic, like me. Much in part to its emergent simplicity.
Ah.
You're shaking your head. Any excuse to bring it up, and I am.
Everybody's a Tetris fanatic. That's not exclusive to you and him.
Randy, I'm really interested in this Tetris game. Can you tell me anything more about this game?
Well,
so they're coming out with a movie. Just watch that.
Oh, you're right.
Yes.
You're already obsoleted, guys. Yay.
By November 1994, KI had shipped. He claimed not to have done a ton on it. However, he did come up with the title. In conjunction,
wow, really?
Yeah.
It's a good title.
It is good. In conjunction with this, the Super NES's fame was waning, and word was beginning to spread around on Nintendo's then codenamed Ultra 64. Hollis was eagerly reading up on the device when he also caught wind of office rumors that his superiors were planning to reject the notion of Rare working on a Bond game. Hollis, being the diehard 007 head that he was, needed to convince the Stampers to reconsider the offer. So how would he do that? With suggesting he front the project himself. His bosses asked him to write a design document, and by April of 95, he was given approval. He was jazzed as heck to get the go-ahead, especially with the lesser amount of professional experience he had. And not even the stigma surrounding license adaptation scared him, probably since he wasn't aware of it. He just dug James Bond, one of the most malleable characters in the pop culture echelon. Ironically, the foundation for Mr. Bond is intentionally dull. It's what occurs around him that escalates the drama and connection to those who engage with the stories on or off the screen. A blunt instrument, as Fleming has stated. An avatar. Recycling attributes of everything from a cowboy to a samurai to even a caricature of imperialist exceptionalism, he represented a predominantly male fantasy consisting of guns, beautiful women, fast cars, luxurious food and drinks, unrivaled athleticism and intelligence. It embodies the power hungriness of the FPS genre where players wish to be the most badass possible.
So, by the way, bringing up Elise again, credit to her for that phenomenal. She did a phenomenal description describing Bond, including those words, a symbol of imperial exceptionalism. And I actually remember. I distinctly remember, and it was just like, I think that's one of the things I tagged in there was just like, it is such a good, it was just like, it was so well spoken for what he represented going into the 90s. Yeah. No, that was And
it's funny,
I
mentioned, this weird sort of moment that Bond was stuck in this uncertainty, and it's like when we watched License to Kill, that's that's a revenge flick. It's at that point it was so out of character. People weren't really ready to it suddenly no longer felt like you wanted to be him anymore. It was fun.
It was very gritty, and coming from the Living Daylights, which was a like very, very.
You went from like the most Bond movie to the least Bond movie, and they were only years apart with the same director and actor.
That was it, and it was like The Living Daylights is like it is a literal spy story.
Yeah,
that is a story involved with smuggling people back and forth across the Berlin
and
Wall.
A lot of surveillance.
People, he's one of his assignments early on is to assassinate someone, which is like, oh yeah, that's right, spies are
classic.
Yeah, and it's very much rooted in that like 80s Cold War vibe, and then the follow up was a revenge tale based around drug traffickers,
narco state shit. There's no like doomsday, like it's
and it's yeah.
That's why I stand by it. But Hollis knew that Rare couldn't just rely on the brand alone, though. As I mentioned, any prior attempts in this space to capture that magic had consistently failed. The 00 universe had never successfully broken into games, analog or digital. To make matters worse, interest was at an all-time low. So much was riding on the GoldenEye film to do the IP its 180, including parent holder MGM, who was struggling financially after accumulating constant debt. To avoid bankruptcy, the movie studio was desperate for a hit. In a similar fashion as the Stampers, Martin Campbell, the director of GoldenEye, was hesitant to get involved with the property as well. Casual sexism wasn't hip anymore. The Cold War was over, and bolder flicks like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon were taking its place. This feeling caused employees throughout Rare to not really give a shit about the project. Surprisingly, Big N thought differently, building hype once they procured the license.
Right.
Gamers soon knew of this when it was featured in the January 95 issue of Nintendo Power, before any work had begun.
I was going to say, we haven't even gotten to the development part yet. You said there's one guy working on the project.
Rare wasn't even on board then. They were just proud that they got the rights ahead of anybody else.
Yeah, thank God the industry is no longer plagued with premature, announcements. And, thank God we've moved beyond that.
Yeah, could you imagine if a Bond game got announced now before they had even started development on it? That would be crazy.
Speaking of, the Nintendo Power Edition in April, or that April, boosted the announcement again by showing pictures of Tim meeting with the film's art director and production designers. From the earliest stages, publicity for the title was to be closely tied to the movie itself. It was also in this that GoldenEye 007 was more or less implied to be a SNES game, something along the lines of a side-scroller with those famous Donkey Kong and Killer Instinct style graphics.
Yeah.
Hollis, however, refused to program on anything that wasn't the N64. So the 16-bit pitch was dropped, and focus was pivoted into waiting for that.
Yeah.
Except, as per the arrangement, it was intended to be released with its Hollywood counterpart, which was dated for that Christmas season. Quote, it was supposed to be a 3-person project and take 9 months. Little did he or anyone else know it would take nearly 3 years with 10 people and $2 million more dollars.
I mean, even that, it's like, as we point out, like, it's just like, that's peanuts. Like, they built that engine from the ground up, from scratch, every asset from the ground up. It's like, if you tried to pull that today, it's like, you're looking at like,
good fucking luck.
It's just
R&D like for 3 years first.
R&D for 3 years. I was like, it's like, you might as well, like, it'll be out in 5-6 years, maybe.
That's what makes the trend chasing so hilarious. Cause then by the time it comes out, they're like, wait, people aren't into,
they're not into
NFTs anymore.
Yeah.
So here's where we have Duncan Botwood, amongst others, in the Rareware conference room, a talented architect and RPG guy. He showcased his portfolio to the crowd, drawings, CAD mock-ups, and a manila folder containing various concepts from his temp gig days. He was said to be very imaginative and Bond familiar. This being revealed when company production manager Simon Farmer ran an interview with him when he was asked directly what he would make for a 007 game. How long do you have? He responded. Luckily for them, this dude not only read all the novels and had seen all the films,
fan.
But he owned the source book for the James Bond tabletop role-playing game, copied and put into a ringed binder.
Why? I remember reading that and thinking, like, we gotta
track one down and see
an old copy of what the tabletop game was like. It's like. That's got to be interesting.
I'm visualizing like Bond D&D, even though it's probably not that.
Well, that's exactly. It's like it's just a variation of some sort of D&D rules. It's like, but, it's like,
yeah, but how do you do that? Because you can't have a party.
You're all James Bond.
It's like the Star Wars problem where it's like everybody's a Jedi now.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, you all. you all walk into the gala all wearing tuxedos, all with pistols concealed. It's just like, who's that group of people? I don't know.
Gonna do a musical number. So the entire staff listened intently as he rattled off idea after idea on gadgets and weaponry. He had no clue that this was a disguised test to see if he was a good fit to bring into the GoldenEye dev team. Obviously, he nailed the position, even getting a higher salary than his friends who graduated from their architecture schools and got their degrees after he dropped out.
Yeah, this is another common thing with people who just like go after whatever. It's just like, yeah, I turned out to be more successful than the people who like,
suck it.
Yeah, it's such a cliche.
So that's 2 peeps out of 10, Matt and Duncan. We'll continue
Martin and Duncan.
Martin and Duncan.
Thank
sorry.
you. I appreciate that you're thinking about me.
Gosh,
but,
yeah.
I think you called him Matt Hollis earlier.
Yes,
Martin Hollis.
Martin
Hollis.
Yes.
Martin and Duncan.
There's also a Mark, and that's what we're gonna get into in a second. So there's a lot of M's.
No, it's so good. I do think Duncan Botwood has such a Dickensian ring to it. Like he sounds like
That's memorable. Yeah.
He sounds like a Victorian chimney sweep.
Kirkhope.
Yeah, Kirkhope. Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah,
I apologize for the extra mats. But we're gonna continue our rundown of those left that Hollis grabbed for his band of modest misfits as we progress. They were and still are a grateful bunch, which is awesome.
Yep.
And don't fret, we're going to speed things up. If you're looking to get deep into the weeds, that's what Elise's book is for.
Yeah, of course.
We just want to cover the highlights.
Hold on. It's called James Bond 007 Role-Playing in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
That's a bit of a mouthful, but I like...
Published in 1983 until 1987 when the license lapsed.
How much is a
now?
Copy going for?
Well, they have different books for the different...
we can find them online, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a Goldfinger, View to a Kill, Dr. No.
Oh, whoa! There's like
Live and Let Die. You Only Live Twice.
Oh, wait a second. Are those like campaign books or like scenario books?
Probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder, is there like a core rule book you have to get?
Yeah, that's the one I just said. The role-playing in emergency secret service. Also, apparently,
I know it's going to be a wild St. Patrick's Day in this house.
It's to reference to what I said earlier. It says, in keeping with the setting, the game focuses on few leading roles and is meant to be played with one game master and one player.
Oh, wow. Okay. Really?
I always thought that if you can pull off like a one-on-one DM and play,
tough.
No, but it's really cool because it gives one person, if they're really into it, like time to shine. If like they're really into like that performance aspect.
There's very few people that can enjoy it. Like if you know.
Yo, how many British nerds you think bought that book and made their like wife like DM just be like, come on, can you?
It won awards, I think. So,
really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't think it reviewed that great, but all right. The highlights. For instance, Mark Edwards was the first actual programmer brought in. A technically savvy fan of sci-fi, he also grew up around computers thanks to his IBM-employed father. He always dreamt of creating video games, but his school didn't offer any such class on the matter, so he self-educated, combing book after book of mathematics and the like. Not being able to obtain a career in the industry, he pursued the medical field for a while to accumulate experience. He then applied for Rare when coming across a page in Edge, advertising the upcoming Ultra 64 collab and hoping to be a participant in that recent Nintendo partnerhood. Tossed his hat into the ring and voila! By January 1995, he was in. They tasked him with playing Ridge Racer on the then recently released PlayStation 1 before starting training on a strange project, asking him to learn more about how to animate joints on a 3D character, something we'd see in practice in GoldenEye years later.
Yeah.
He also had zero clue the assignment was attached to James Bond.
Joints?
He was just thrilled to finally be working on games.
I love weed.
Yeah, he got the job. He actually called a phone number on a bathroom stall that he found, and it led to Rare's hiring offices. They're just like, whoa,
this is a good time.
Yeah.
I just imagine a small town in the middle of the countryside of England, and there's like a telephone pole with one of those papers that you rip the number off of.
Yeah.
Do you want to work on video games? Yes, I do.
Also, I have this old guitar that I'm interested in buying. So next is Carl Hilton, the Ferrari-loving modeler who spent weeks rendering his favorite car into a full asset, who upon meeting Hollis was too prodded of his opinion on 007. Without hesitation, he told him he too was a devoted Bond fan, and then the job of building the game's environments went to him, making Carl the first artist among the crew.
Yes, that is probably there's plenty of fascinating dev stories, but like man, it's like what a job you got to build those levels. On the topic of topophilia and level design and being in love with maps, it's like I just think it's like,
Which
man,
they'll all be familiar, all you listeners on that
yes,
scene,
we talk a little bit about this topic about video game levels and nostalgia in the interview. It's a very fascinating talk. But if I had one job on that team, I would
it would be his.
It would have been his. Yeah, it's really awesome.
Like Duncan, he was an architect, and like Matt Hollis, he had a past creating his own software published in magazines. He used to stake out his campus's lab to have access to CAD on their Macs, one that he'd sometimes pack up and bring home on holiday breaks. He then studied computer visualization in Bournemouth, the university's master's program, and found himself at Rare shortly after. Cautious of the vibe that surrounded licensed products, he remained professional, awaiting what his role would entail. Now we have Brett Jones, their second artist. He was another fresh out of college graduate. And this was for graphic design. He was known throughout the office as their resident jokester who'd lighten the mood. He had a reputation for being quite the collector as well. Same. Star Trek and Bond memorabilia, which was a plus. That, and he saved everything from his tenure at the company, including swaths of GoldenEye character portraits. I think Elise was talking about. He was the one who's like showing off, stuff, and it's so good. Yeah. Also, he had a great rapport with Hilton as they had sat together geeking out in one of their BU courses. Carl actually was the one who got him his recommendation to come to Rare. Interestingly, he wasn't much of a gamer and was instructed to flub the truth a bit at the advice of Hilton, a move that proved victorious.
Which, by the way, being the team joker for British people, that can be anything from just like a slightly drier wit to like just the driest wit. You know, it's just like he's just slightly more biting in his remarks than everybody else. Yeah.
In America, it just means you smack folders out of people's hands.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
You wear a clown nose to work and
Patch out.
Yeah.
Once on the team, he watched videos to educate himself on Aaliyah Wavefront, later renamed Maya, a system dedicated to making sprites. Soon he had conquered the ability to model, rig, light, animate, and render using ships from Star Trek as references. He then transitioned from space vehicles to humans, and to his astonishment, got invited to the 007 staff full-time.
By the way, still in use.
Yeah. Prior to any more members getting recruited, it was here that we'd have our first real brainstorming session on what GoldenEye could be within their capabilities and brand oversight. What is the appropriate level of violence? Can we procure footage from the film set? Can we insert authentic music? And what about the famous title sequence, the barrel? Or camera, depending on what are the details when it came to the celebrity likenesses of the series' actors and actresses? How should we approach tone? Elise's book emphasizes the game's inclusions of humor to balance out the killing. You know?
Yes.
So it was also exciting, and they stayed in close touch with Nintendo on the answer to many of these questions. While not often cited today for their allowance of artistic freedom, Rare were pumped to find out how broadly they could paint their brushes.
I mean, I think it's like, you just brought up the initial staff. If they had an area that they were working on, occasionally they had input and assistance from other people, but it's just like, that is a very grand sense of importance in the work when it's like Duncan Botwood is responsible for the character modeling. It's like, whatever work he does, that is what gets put in the final game, and like whatever decisions he makes, those are his decisions made. It's like
it's far less like corporate, like just oversight in general than you would expect.
And it's like that
especially from Nintendo.
And I can speak from experience that it's like when your contributions to the project are that massive, it's just like that drives you for sure. And it's like that is a very big difference between they talk about how much crunch time and how tough it was, but it's, that's the difference between that and like forced crunch time and overtime that burns people out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge, that motivating factor of like how much do you own this finished product is like, it changes your mindset.
Now, in GoldenEye's earliest pitches, it was gearing to be an on-rail shooter, a la Sega's Virtua Cop.
Yep.
Just without the need of a light gun peripheral.
Yep.
The campaign's paths would be heavily scripted, but Hollis wished to intensify the genre and go from stationary screens to faster-paced missions depicting a wide range of backdrops so the player wouldn't become bored. Arcade titles were quick, repetitive quarter eaters, but this was a full-scale home release.
Right.
He also wanted destructible objects and extensive visual effects, explosions, muzzle flashes, bullet holes, and needed more robust gameplay than Virtual Cop. More animations, more sophisticated AI, more interactivity. The team then began conversing on the idea to expand on the movie's plotline in order to add additional set pieces, ones that feature stealthier moments of sabotage and even rescue objectives. Except they had a tall hurdle to cross before any of these concepts could come to fruition. None of them had N64 hardware to work on yet.
Not at all. They didn't even know. They didn't even know what the controller would look like, and that was actually their primary hurdle to actually committing to taking it off rails. Was like they wanted to do it, but they didn't know if it was possible until they knew what the controller was going to be like. It's like it wasn't until they got that it's like. And so it's like that was probably responsible for a lot of the early delays.
And not just no controller, but no development kits, no documentation of specs.
On specs, yep.
They just had it was like a chipset emulator.
Yep.
This literally went on for an entire year of production.
Yeah.
But they didn't, just sit back and twiddle their thumbs. Hollis and Edmund chose to use this time to program the engine. Hilton then was assigned to levels, Jones on characters, Botwood bounced around to give assistance on anything possible, and they got that first alpha build up and running in about 12 months or so. A process that couldn't be more different than the age of sharing engines and assets now,
I mean, just going back to what you said about how the deadline expanded from 9 months to, what do you say, 2.5, 3 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, the goalpost got moved.
It's like, bear in mind that is actually a pretty impressive development cycle for what they eventually produced.
Yeah.
But think about it's like a full year of that was spent basically unable to move past the prototype stage. So it's like they got a late start for what they did, cut off a year of that 2.5, so they had once they finally got their hands on the hardware, it's just like they had, a year and a half to get from prototype to finish. It's like, it's very impressive what they managed to accomplish.
You're right. Looking back, that's just makes it that all the more
they really they worked with what they put their all into every step of this, and the fact they were still able to get it out.
The basic framework on this was assembled from fucking scratch, like you said.
There was no prior engine that they could just they couldn't just take the Doom engine and reskin it. It's like they did everything from scratch.
It's like you're chopping down the tree to build the house. You're not just starting with the planks. This way it would be optimized solely for their project. The tools, then the game. No Unreal or Unity to mitigate the load. Techniques were invented simply to trek forward. Soon they were on camera placement, hitbox testing, the aiming. There was verticality, 3 key innovations in separating GoldenEye from the sea of Doom clones flooding the market.
Yeah. That was the era right there. It's like at that point it was like
reskins and
reskins, and I think was Hexen fully 3D, or was that actually also another?
That was sprite based.
Still sprite based, yeah. So it's just
Quake was the first fully 3D one that it did.
So, and it was just
Which would have been after this.
No, Quake was 96, so it was while this was
after this is what I mean.
Oh yes, they where Quake, we're at right now, there was nothing to go
Quake
off.
Quake was
of.
not out yet.
That type of
Quake
precision
came out before GoldenEye, but
correct,
not where in the timeline where we currently are.
Yeah, I mean we do also have to.
The only other thing that's only barely analogous to this is, I guess, Turok was in development, but neither were aware of the other.
And I think Turok was also 97, right?
It was earlier that year, and that's when it was funny because it was like Turok came out and people were like, "This is pretty good," and then GoldenEye came out and they're like, "Oh,
yeah." Well, I mean,
and I like Turok.
Listen, Turok was also had the benefit of riding on the heels of Jurassic Park, and so everybody was
that's a good point.
So if they came up with a game that's like, yeah, you want to shoot the dinosaurs?
That cover, was like,
Turok, I think it
eventually evolved into being its own thing,
yeah,
but
it has its place
in comparison to what it was doing that was new. It didn't.
It's GoldenEye eclipsed it by far.
During the tweaking of these mechanics, Hollis proposed the idea of quote free movement, making it totally open. However, this wouldn't eliminate what they had done to this point, but instead be a bonus feature. They just need a better look at what was inside the N64 to turn the prospect into a reality. Within a few months, the team found themselves on the list of those able to visit the film shoot. There was an abundance of food for the taking, drinks, fancy car rides. These guys were in heaven. Jones couldn't resist himself and even took a couple shell casings and fake glass shards from the soundstage as souvenirs. I would have done the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
They fervently occupied a table in the studio's cafe, catching a brief glimpse of Brosnan as he came in and out of the room there. Eon was being incredibly accommodating, though Nintendo still hadn't sent them dev stations. God damn it. Regardless, they used the trip wisely, taking pictures of whatever they could. Sets, props, costumes. By doing this, many of the in-game textures were directly taken from those set photographs and scaled down to maintain as true to the movie's aesthetic as they can.
You know what's wild about that?
Yeah.
If you were to make a Marvel, just use Marvel as the analog. If you were to make a Marvel video game now and you've set visit, you literally cannot do that because the sets are done after the movie is filmed.
Oh my God, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I know it's like sometimes those directors are chosen like after their scenes are already shot. Like, you know, like the VFX studio is already, wow. Like just the whole process at which everything is has changed so much.
But I mean, you know, anybody who's played GoldenEye, it's like play the game and then watch the movie, and it's like there's like
it's cool. I love doing that comparison.
It's like there's like things where it's just like, okay, based on just what you can see from what they got from the scene and the levels, the level is almost like a true to life match for what I think the perfect
game only deviates when you're like, what's behind that door?
That's, the game expands into the areas you don't see on the sets in the movie, but the parts of the set that are shown are copied so directly. I think a great example is when the archive scene.
Yes,
okay,
that's
that level. The parts of that
doors.
level that you see in the film, not just how it looks,
it's like
but
the route he takes.
The exact floor plan of that level is based on that set. What's even cooler, he even leaves the interrogation room, goes up the exact staircase in the movie,
Shoots
and then
his way through that with that big room with all the bookshelves and then the tall windows.
And he goes down the H-shaped hallway and turns towards his right, towards the main archive, and that is how the game is. You make that exact turn into the archive, and it's like, they had to take some liberties with the grates in the archives, but it's like, it's really it is so...
it's as close as you could get.
It's as close as you get. You could have honestly, they could have looked at it and they could have said, this is too challenging. I can't work with this. I can't make a level like this. It's just too boring. But it's like, no, they
They knew how to fill it in with their imagination.
Yeah, and it's like that, I think, adds to, we're going to talk about the level design. It adds to that sense of realism in the game.
Oh, yes, a lot of this was apparent in GoldenEye's realism. Because the majority of FPSs on the scene were pretty fantastical in nature, cartoonish. Like, that's not at all slight. I mean, it's like Doom, you're in hell, this project wanted to replicate something tangible, an opportunity Rare had never previously had. What you'd witness in the theater could then be replayed on your house's CRT. From memorable scenes like sneaking through the vents of facility and the St. Petersburg tank chase to recognizing the familiar faces of Trevelyan, Natalia, Xena, Boris, Valentin, and Ormov.
The scene, the bottling room in facility was like when you play the game and then you get to that, because that's the first set.
Yeah.
I guess dam kind of too, but
it's brief,
it's just a dam.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get to the bottling room in facility, you're like, this is exactly. I was like, when we were playing it here,
one stairwell,
and your brother was there, and I just escaped the same way Bond escapes in the movie through that little conveyor belt. Yeah. And Chris was like, wait, you can get out that way? And Randy's like, yeah, that's how he gets out in the movie.
Yeah.
I think even before you get to the bathroom, in the movie, he leaves the bathroom that looks exactly as it does in the game. The door he leaves the bathroom to is the same view of the stairs looking down.
Those vantage points are like,
and even in the bottling room, and I think again this adds to the realism. In the movie, he shoots a grate and a bunch of like metal containers flood down the room.
Up there. Yeah.
Well, the containers aren't up there, but the place where they would be is modeled into the game. Even though when you go in there, there are no enemies. There's no point in going in there whatsoever. It's just there for completeness.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is truly, I think, what, it's made me obsessed with, just looking, it's like, they put so much attention, they stuck to so much attention to detail. It is fun looking at something so well designed.
No, same. It's like wandering on a movie set.
It is. Yeah, it's really, really, it's fantastic. And the parts that they had to come up with on their own are fantastically well done, I think.
Yeah. And although their goals were to be faithful, Hollis was hoping to include a healthy number of locales to explore, and that the crew felt the source material didn't have enough to provide this. So trust was then given to pad the campaign out to grow the story's lore, a decision they received no contesting on. They weren't the same medium, Matt, that Martin thought. I said Matt again, jeez. If they stuck too close, it'd be too predictable. This was how we got dam, surface, and silo, frigate, depot, and caverns.
Yeah.
It was a solid plan. And not only that, but if it wasn't portrayed on screen already, then there would be no point of comparison, and they could prioritize on maximizing frame rate in those sections.
Yeah, and actually, so aside from the first 3 levels, if you cut out the material that is not in the movie, you would go to frigate and then straight to statue. That is just halfway through the game. It's like the action that Bond is literally a part of, really in the movie does not happen until he statue, because he meets up with Valentin before then, and it's like Severnaya was all Natalia. Silo doesn't even happen in the movie.
You're right. That's from her perspective.
So it's like them going off script. Really, it's like it could have been like a 12 level game instead of like the 20 that it wound up being.
Yeah.
And it's like that extra material,
excluding the bonus ones.
Yeah, it fleshed out the game very well.
So they buckled down. Wireframe models of each level were built with textures overlapping them. Gridded paper was sketched on for enemy and item placement. Areas such as bunker and statue became near labyrinthian in scope, but certain hints were inserted to aid guiding the player towards the action, like little arrows and whatnot. Jones and Smith reminisced on the creation of jungle based on their time with rendering foliage in Donkey Kong Country. Fog, a tactic used to hide draw distance and increase performance, saw its way into maps akin to these. This detriment was then basically turned itself into a benefit as it increased engagement with zoomable scoped weapons, an unheard of option in 1997. Cradle and Streets were identified to be the most insane to figure out, this in relation to their openness.
Yeah.
The latter even resulted in a mistake where the final block emptied into
to the void,
into the endless dark void that Elise entered. But it's whatever. That as we all were in agreement, that just added to the charm.
It just added to the charm. It was just a very smoggy depot. Yeah. You gotta really breathe carefully in there.
There were Easter eggs and little inside jokes hidden all over the damn place.
Yeah.
The no bond sign.
All over the damn place.
That wasn't even intentional. Rare's logo and graffiti. Yep. The VHS tape and clob, of course. Except old Eagle-Eye Nintendo, they gave one of their earliest inputs on cutting content when testers spotted the Russian word for vodka on the side of those brown crates that you see scattered about.
Man, it's just like, damn, these testers must be like some of like the most qualified testers that they've spotted a word in Russian. That is just like, it's like who notices that and is also able to, like, they also like, let me translate that to make sure it's kosher.
I think it's funnier. In the final version, they instead read Vadco.
They read Vadco, and I think Elise in her book, one of the developers had a great reaction. Nintendo was a very family-friendly company, and those families don't drink vodka.
But never did they think that so many people would be inspecting every inch of their work over the next quarter century.
That's, yes.
Meanwhile, as the rest of Rareware were hammering down in the trenches, GoldenEye, the motion picture, was getting ready to have its premiere at the Radio City Music Hall over in New York. And there was a massive weight on Brosnan and director Martin Campbell's shoulders. This was their chance to save the then dying cinematic franchise. Curiously, Pierce had been the choice for Bond since the mid-'80s when the film's prologue was set. But his contract for the television show Remington Steele made it unobtainable till then. It goes without saying that everybody will always have their personal favorite when it comes to their 007.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Pierce's debut outing saw positive praise, and the movie itself was a commercial hit too.
Oh yeah, it's one of those movies that it's just like you can't really recapture it because it was the post-Soviet era. Yeah. And so it's like it's one of those movies that really captures like just like that like going to like the Fallen Monument Park with all the old comments. It's like it really had these themes of, it's like moving on from the past and like what's the new thing for it? Because like the fall of the Soviet Union, it changed the world.
And Bond had to change too. I mean, like the character managed to cleanly break into the new age with a techno thriller plotline and visuals to match it. A fresh take from a fresh cast of writers and producers to get the property back on track. And this was uncharted territory. Like you said, it's like the USSR was no more. The Berlin Wall was no more. The threats had to change. His companions needed updating. And they did. A sexy entry for the 90s crowd. Thematically, Elise describes both the film and the game as signifying the passage of time, a response to the ever-forming social and political shifts in the modern world.
Yeah.
The anxieties of evolving technologies, the rise of global communication, the intro music video, that Tina Turner song captures this. And these subtextual components would even be an element of the Austin Powers, Eternal Man of Mystery, like satirizing of tropes of 2 years after. Yeah. Each host a lesson in workplace harassment. The former being delivered by M, who is now portrayed by a woman.
Judi Dench.
The tone,
Dame Judi Dench.
Yeah, and the tone could remain horny, especially with its female antagonist, Xenia, but. Having the love interest be a programmer sent a signal to those in the current generation. Brosnan and Campbell acknowledged the self-awareness of leftover non-PC moments, intentional so that the calling outs could occur.
Yeah.
What does she refer to him? It's a sexist, misogynist dinosaur.
A sexist, misogynist
dinosaur. A relic
dinosaur.
of the Cold War.
And I mean, it's like it's a testament to the movie that it's like they needed to bring this series into the 20th century. But if you look closely enough, it still has all these Bond staples in it.
Yeah.
I pointed out the last time we watched it, I was like,
just like through a different lens. Like,
it's so hard to realize because they don't call it out, but the bad guy has a hidden lair underneath a fake lake, which is so Bond. But when you're watching it,
it doesn't feel out of place or campy.
It doesn't feel campy. It doesn't feel like a lair.
It's treated with such sincerity.
It feels like it's his headquarters, its operations center. It makes sense, but if you think about it, it's the bad guy's lair.
Like it stays cohesive despite like on paper that sounding
and silly. It was like to have Natalia be a programmer was a shift to computers. The satellite no longer is attached with a laser or nuclear missiles.
An EMP.
It's an EMP blast.
I know that came up in the interview. I never thought it was like that was probably the first time I ever heard of that concept like as a weapon.
It's like that is, and I think it does. I think it's there's a great, a fantastic shot where it's like you see the GoldenEye laser charging up, and you hear this chirping noise, and it builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
And it's like, but instead of seeing this blast shoot out of the laser, you see a couple flashes of light, and that's enough to completely wipe out
so cool
the base. And it's like, it's enough to just like, wow, it's like just a couple, like you can't even see the thing that is going to just like wipe out.
Also, the miniatures in that movie, dope.
Yeah, it's very well done.
So James was relevant again. The hiatus was done. In the UK, it was the third largest box office opening ever, only behind Jurassic Park and Batman Forever, and the biggest in MGM's history or any prior Bond release, grossing $365 million in its run, more when you account DVD sales. I adore the GoldenEye film, not just because it was my first, but it's so fun and well edited. The score is stellar. Save the IP until it needed saving again in 2006. But, we'll get there when we come to it.
By the way, speaking of Alex Lair, rest in peace, the Arecibo Complex. That's I believe I knew it sustained damage, and I believe it is officially retired. Man, it's like whoever came up with that choice took a look at it and be like,
this is our
this is like our set piece right here, because it looks so cool. And it's like in real life
it does.
In real life it was used for for astronomy and all these like really like beneficial things for science. And in the movie it's just like it's used to guide a weapons.
What about that Easter Island train looking thing? What do you think that was used for?
I have gone back and looked up, and I'm like, was that actually modeled on a real Soviet train?
I've always been curious.
I couldn't find anything about it, but I was like, if so,
it's intimidating looking.
If so, dude, the Soviets knew how to make something look oppressive. And that thing, you see that, and you're like, that thing just like, it just is ominous.
What?
If you're more on that right now, play Atomic Heart.
And actually, that exact train model, though, does make a cameo in the second Tomb Raider game.
What?
Rise of the Tomb Raider, in a warehouse.
Fuck out of here.
No, in a warehouse at the end of train tracks, that train is housed and just covered in debris and dark. It doesn't even point out, but I looked at it and I was like, that's the train from GoldenEye.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's rad. So anyway, this red carpet event was on November 13th, 1995, if I didn't state that. That month also marked a Tokyo Game Show hosted by Nintendo to finally grant those beggars a glimpse at the much anticipated and still unfinished N64. 3D was here, y'all. And GoldenEye 007 was among those titles there to support the console's reveal. Unfortunately, this presentation would portray the game in an incompleted, unpolished form with a tiny teaser vid. In the footage and early archives was shown. The visuals were there, but the way it would later play was not the least bit analogous to this. To this trailer. The movement was still on rails. The speed was slow. The action scripted. There wasn't even a gun model on the screen. It appeared barely interactive. Hollis called the showing a sham, a facade.
It was, yeah. It was, yeah. They even say,
as with many similar demos at trade expos. I don't know.
No, for sure. And it was like, I mean, yeah, it's like obviously nobody could predict the future and be like, this game is going to look so different on launch. But also, they overshadowed themselves because they had a setup for, I believe, Banjo-Kazooie there, and people...
No, that's E3.
Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so their engine wasn't finalized, let alone missions or objectives, but with its Hollywood counterpart now basking in its riches, it was obvious that Rare had missed its initial deadline. First many. And the name would then drift further into irrelevancy with each passing day. Not that this was their fault. The hopes of GoldenEye being a core launch title and synchronized tie-in were also dashed by the delay of the platform itself. Everyone was behind schedule, to be honest. But here arrives Dr. Doak's time to shine. Over the ensuing months, Rare's team would hire on new members. You had Addie Smith, a second environmental artist, and the aforementioned David Doak, a system administrator who had only been employed at the studio for about half a year, when Hollis discovered a fax hinting that he may leave for another career out in New Zealand. Turnover rates at the company were supremely low, as so many of the people there were heavily invested in their respective projects, which therein lay the issue. Doak would pop around the rooms and stations within their office, though there wasn't a whole lot for him to really do. He was antsy. He wanted to make games, but didn't have the programming knowledge to properly provide that assistance. Right. Hollis then encouraged him to join in on what they were doing and telling him he could give input here and there on aspects of their design. The offer was irregular, but it did make him stay. Post that TGS show, Martin wanted more crew with them. It was either that or this shit was getting canceled. They couldn't have those impressive pieces, going to waste. Onboarding Doak was awesome for morale. He eventually became GoldenEye's pseudo-human mascot.
Yes, he's very active on Twitter, and he still loves fan engagement.
Best profile pic.
And in fact, he's like...
He frequently, he does interviews, fan meetups,
and it's like, especially...
that silly online presence with all his followers.
There's that, the Xbox Live remake was leaked last year. I'm sure you'll talk more about that, but...
Oh, yeah,
that was like...
Episode.
It's like he keeps... He's been very active lately because it's like he's had been a lot of GoldenEye attention. So it's like he's been very active. He still loves it. He's been great.
Yeah.
Apparently, fans love to send him gifs of shooting his character in the dick, and he likes every single one of them. Yep, he's totally cool with it. So
what a way for your legend to live on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was responsible for the overall structure of campaign levels, placement of objects, and what have you. And yes, he is indeed a doctor.
Yeah.
He studied at fucking Oxford for a decade, earning his BA, MA, and PhD in biochemistry. He's got many papers published on sodium channel proteins and other stuff I don't understand. And also, he stumbled on the job at Rare through an Edge magazine spread as well.
Jesus, Edge magazine, man.
This to manage their network of Silicon graphics machines.
Yep.
I guess that's how they found you back then.
Yeah, that was
magazines.
the Silicon graphics. That was the SGIs I had mentioned before, right? They were like, they were. I feel like they were very instrumental in making this game.
So, being a consumer of their company's prior works, he applied for a laugh and then was hastily snatched up. Considering there weren't many folks who were well versed in operating those SG computers, like you said.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to him, this was in high demand for video games of that era.
Making the jump from system administrator to full-blown game design and game programming very impressive leap, because it's like the system administration guy on the job, but it's like it would literally be as if I just got a job as a game developer, just not like just having that's
a big transition.
Yeah, just having the job experience. It's like not having any portfolio, not having, and it's like, well, you know the system, you know the hardware, so you know what, and it's like again, goes back to taking a chance on someone and giving them room to fail.
Yeah,
but he didn't. He did very well.
Right? Yeah. His mother, though, was in shock. 10 years of training in the biochem field to, quote, run away with the circus, she said.
That is also, I feel like...
But it was a route he never regretted taking.
I feel like that is also a tale, like a classic tale of, like, people who go for advanced degrees and then just changing course mid.
This is more fun anyway.
Yeah, no, it does happen, and it's like it's a great story.
I love it.
Yeah.
So going from overseeing their expensive fridge-sized mainframes to GoldenEye consultant was inspiring to him. He would teach himself coding in any down hours, ultimately leading to his creation of the glorious watch screen we know today. Accompanied with its cherished music track, the menu displayed everything from your available gadgets and weapons to the status of your mission tasks. Here, players could also, tweak their game settings, aspect ratio, which is pretty nifty, and it accurately gives the time, in the context of its fiction, anyway.
Yes.
As detailed as these touches are, it also invented a controversial feature, which we joked about in the interview quite a bit. Unlike other titles, the pause wouldn't actually immediately halt the gameplay.
Yeah.
To the frustration of users, the animation of Bond's arm lifting made him vulnerable to getting shot for precious seconds.
Yeah. Oh, and trust me, man.
This was on purpose.
Oh, listen, on 00 Agent, I can pause to restart the mission, and I won't even have to, because in that half second, I literally lost.
That's when you're
health.
just like, all right, I can't get the cheat this way.
Yeah. It's
But this would put a stop to spammers and supply extra tension when in combat. He did recount it as being, quote, slightly sadistic, but is content with the mechanic nonetheless.
I thought that was good that he stood by that decision. I thought, you had said you had known about that, but I had never even really connected the dots of like,
the only reason aside, vivid memories when you're a kid, in that game, there's an element we're going to get into in next episode when it came to the friction of movement. And when you get shot, it's not for the NPCs, but it is relevant to the player characters, both in single and multi. If you get shot, you move. So if you go to look at your watch and you get hit, you would like bounce back, like on ice skate,
I mean, like even more frustrating is like not when you're pausing it, but if you were trying to rush to an objective, like you have to press a computer. You can stand it.
Yeah, it'll knock you out of the way of interacting with the objective.
It's like you'll press the button in facility to open the door, and if you get shot from the doorway, it will push you away, and you'll miss the button hit. And actually, another thing that I again really became more aware of in this playthrough, you pointed out the enemies that charge at you and keep firing,
relentless.
And I was like, I never really paid that close attention playing this prior, but once you pointed out the charging enemies, I never missed it when they did it, and I hated it.
Yeah, it's you fuckers.
It's, on 00 Agent, a charging enemy will
end half your health or more.
It'll end the mission for you, for sure.
And inclusions such as that were just an example in adhering to their development principles. Is it fun? Is it funny? Is it consistent to the game's universe? And is it fair? To elaborate on that last value there, they didn't believe that things were always required to be fair from the get-go.
Right.
You'd learn that pausing could potentially cause your demise, that certain items will get randomly spawned, that innocent scientists or civilians can get in your line of fire. It's unconventional and pushes the boundaries of fairness, but hey, it keeps with the language and their interpretation of fair.
Yes.
That's how you'd learn,
yes, it's consistent.
Just like there are rules on like realism,
Yeah, you're right. It's like when you look at it, when enemies get caught in an explosion, they're one for the bird watcher. Sometimes they go
walk right into it,
and it's like, I think the perfect example that you and Elise pulled out was the fact that everything explodes. Now, does it make sense that desks and chairs also explode? No, but
it is hilarious.
But everything explodes, and as long as it's consistent.
Exactly.
Who cares? Yes. And it's like, it's funny because it's like, you're right. As a kid, I didn't even question why does maybe I did question, but it's like, you just come to know that everything explodes.
You're just like, no, this all makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I love the mainframes in that game because they look like old school mainframes.
They do.
They're big blocky things. They're great. Yeah.
Moving on to modeling characters, faces in particular, some nice references were needed. This was when Jones would go about the offices collecting photos of employees to wrap over the heads of any non-SAG figures necessary for NPC variety. They'd snap whoever nearby who was willing. The IT staff, the kitchen staff, their gardeners, a plumber, Tim Stamper's 12-year-old son, even the friendly office maid, Sally.
Yeah.
And she was delighted to oblige. It wasn't what the industry tends to use for, shooter titles.
I'm fairly sure they had like an HVAC or a plumber guy that they used, and they're like, yo, come on over here.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah.
Do you think he knows? Like,
I am actually, so it's like I would have to know if he actually wound up in the game or not, because I'm fairly sure that he probably took more headshots than he probably needed. So it's like, I don't know how many of them wound up in the end. I mean, 12-year-old son, it's like, what did he wind up
looking like in the end?
Yeah, it's like, well, what? It's like, yeah, it's like, did he make it into the game?
There's a lot in there, especially in the multiplayer. But
and there's a lot of heads.
Yeah, Jones went on to render multiple outfits for the in-game models too, depending on the scenario. Jungle camo for jungle guards, snow camo for snow guards. GoldenEye's credits list him as costume designer, a cheeky but accurate nod to his efforts in giving the levels a cool dose of personality. Not that this was easy. Correctly mapping these pictures meant lots of source material. He had to resort to publicity photographs just to make any of the featured actors recognizable. You couldn't scan a face the way it's handled now. He needed front shots and side shots to blend together without giving off the appearance of a flat, horrifying mask. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
This was why he wandered Rare's campus with his cumbersome digital camera, to get all of these angles and in the right lighting. The cameo factor wasn't the reason, as endearing as it was that we notice it. Once he had what was necessary, he'd stitch the JPEGs onto one another with a pre-Photoshop type painter in Maya.
Yeah.
Then fuck them up a bit to make them look more like bad guys.
Yeah.
His own had dark circles around his eyes.
Yes. He's instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
When you play the game, but it's like he is by far the ugliest guard, and that guard was so notoriously ugly that I believe at least reported like a fan sent in a photo of the guard's head to a magazine or them and said, like, is this a sick joke? Like, who did you not like? And I think it was his face.
That's funny.
And it's you know what it is? It's the bowl cut. It is spottable from like a mile away.
You're like
bowl cut.
Carl Hilton's was the one that had that gnarly scar.
The scar,
on
yep.
him. And he reveled in his hideous army of monsters. Loved it. Edmund's curly hair needed to go, although he'd get his due as the skateboarder on the bunker monitor.
And another one made a cameo as the talking general in the Russian
the dude
hat.
Who's like smashing the desk.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's a front-on face of a dude in a Russian hat, like yelling at the screen.
Yeah.
It's like they all made various cameos. I think someone is graffitied on the side of Depot or a statue, I believe, and it's like their image and likeness.
Cute.
Like their initials are all over the game in hidden places.
Yeah, that I knew.
Brett Jones, the JB or the BJ in Statue Park is not James Bond. It is Brett Jones.
There you go.
Yep.
An exception was that Dr. Doak's avatar was fairly clean. Originally meant as a placeholder joke, his inclusion in the final version as an active colleague of the facility's most randomest objective awarded him a cult hero-like status.
Yes, and actually the that was not like a thing they slipped through. Like the Stampers very specifically requested, like they saw it and they said, you need to remove him. You need to fill him in with an actual character. You can't.
They weren't too pleased about it and put his like real name getting used.
No, they weren't. They wanted.
They promptly had him taken out, and then Hollis snuck him back in.
Oh, that was that is the case.
Yeah,
and snuck him back in, and it's like that was also one of those. It was blessed by the tight, cramped development schedule that it was just one of those things that had snuck in.
And his real portrait is used in the castle. Like it's an identity he embraces. I would too, but the Stampers themselves they would actually abstain from using including their photos altogether. Like they possibly from people who are saying maybe not wanting to cause any worker discomfort by having testers repeatedly shoot their bosses in the face.
Exactly. And speaking of which, I mean, maybe you mentioned Sally. I wonder if she wound up being the one female face in the game, the Moonraker Guard.
Yes, and I think she's also on a civilian that was on. So it's
Civilians. Yes,
this segues into
civilians.
Nintendo's second note on the game's amount of violence. Outside of the two main characters, Natalia and Xenia, they would show unease at the idea of players being able to cause harm to women.
Yeah.
So female enemy and civilian models were stripped from the single player and relegated exclusively to the multiplayer modes.
Right. Yes.
Bizarrely enough, this would work in the devs' favor. See, this process also struck complications when it came to polygonal count. Each human asset was 42 by 24 pixels, while faces were allowed 40 triangles max. This is when their fists got morphed into the blocks.
Yes.
But memory was in tight supply. He claims this was also why Valentin's head looks like a square.
Yeah, I mean, that entire character he looks like a bunch of squares, essentially, which, I mean, what's that, Riz Davies?
Yes, rest in peace.
Hagrid, yeah, I mean, listen, it worked out fine because he looks like a very, he's kind of a blocky dude.
That suit especially. The budgeting of polygons soon got so ridiculous that rendering pointy breasts became something to be conscious of.
Yes.
To their luck, it wasn't much of a challenge following that request from Nintendo.
Yeah.
But it's like...
yeah. Man, just like, again, I go back the Wild West, man.
Yeah.
The Wild West.
So we're going to end it. This is one of my favorite parts of their story. It probably is my favorite part of the story.
I think it is also my favorite anecdote as well.
GoldenEye 007 is forever applauded for its limb-based damage system. But how did they tackle this? Well, by putting Duncan Botwood in a smelly neoprene motion capture suit used for Killer Instinct and beating the shit out of him for hours on end.
And one of the I wouldn't say the earliest motion capture, but it was not the standard set of equipment. It's like basically they whipped together this motion capture.
Yeah.
It was a very primitive form of what is now
what evolved into something way different.
Yeah, and even Elise even mentions in the book, he couldn't just take the raw input. He's like the vertexes would bounce strangely.
Yeah.
He had to polish out every single animation.
I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't. So these sessions left him battered and bruised as he hung attached to a wall by these tangled cables. They'd always get caught within themselves. Yeah. Each take though just didn't come out quite right. I know we went back and forth. That's the interview because it's just too good. That's when Jones hatched the bright idea of asking Botwood to first close his eyes before doing a stunt.
Yep.
The reactions were then infinitely more real because they were.
Yeah.
Without foreseeing the incoming blows and flinching, recording the sudden impacts of Jones' shoves and punches lent themselves perfectly to the soldier's animation of being shot in various body parts from various directions. Duncan was nervous, but a great sport about it, sacrificing his health to die thousands of times for the game. And this isn't just that either. He'd run, roll, kneel, jump, dodge, fall, flip, stagger, dive, anything to achieve those distinguished animations we saw in the end product. It truly gave GoldenEye life in a way no other shooter did.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, just like, go right at you, like, the player, combatants would employ strategies such as taking cover behind boxes or toss grenades. It was crazy to witness what happened when you landed a bullet. They'd clench their chest, they'd grab their wooden leg, they'd double over to a shot to the groin.
Yeah.
An oddly satisfying feat. But and this gave Botwood the position of being the game's kind of like star performer.
Really, and I mean,
he went all out. So all this commended. Yeah.
And I mean, it's like combined with the fact that his face appears on one of the enemies. It's just like that is also close.
He's
to
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also close to a digital representation of him being in there. If you shoot his enemy, if you shoot him,
that's his reaction. Yeah. And I like this quote from Martin too. We had plenty of soft mats around, but I don't think we could have gotten away with it in today's safety conscious environment.
Not at all.
As GoldenEye didn't contain any VO, excluding death cries, the attitude brought to the table from these recordings provided a bunch of character in the body language. A player could deduce on whether or not they've been spotted or who was pursuing them based on the movements of the NPCs alone. They'd sneeze, swat at flies, idle.
Yes, I remember learning about that as a kid and going straight.
Especially because you wouldn't notice unless you had like the invisible cheat on sometimes, or you're like looking for a sniper really far.
You could, if you turned on, if you had all weapons, or you went to a level with the sniper. I remember going straight to a level with the sniper and sitting there and watching as the
For a
dudes
few minutes, and you're like, what is he doing?
literally swatting flies. I was like, I thought it was so funny.
That's a nice touch. So a few were too complex, however, and plans for actions like crawling had to be abandoned at the wayside. An answer to why in split screen you can see your buddies like glide along the floor on one knee.
It's funny.
Hey, at least you can still shoot off hats, though.
No, yeah. I thought it was so funny because it's like that. Reading about that, how they had to nix crawling, because it's like, can you imagine like
having to do that? Like, it's
like, imagine it's like when you're crawling, it's like reducing your movement speed. It would have slowed. I feel like it would have slowed.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But it's like that awoke into memory of when I was a kid and discovering that you could literally slide around on your knees. Like you're just like the floor is just covered in
like grease.
Grease. And the thing is though, you still maintain the same speed, so it's like it is so comical looking to play around. We definitely as kids did like crouchers only, and you had to play the entire time on crouching, and it's man, my God, it's so funny to just watch people do that. It's amazing.
So with this, they then had to transfer the data they had to project onto the 3D models. They'd map the joints with mock skeletons, which still took tons of cleanup after.
Yeah.
And but in time, they would have walk cycles, correct placement of feet. The team would fit whatever they could in the space of those cartridges. A portion of the animations had to be retouched by hands.
Yes.
I think one case being Bond and Natalia's makeout sesh over the credit scroll.
Yeah. And I think, just reading about all the work he put into, he was responsible for character art. And so it's like between costume design, translating the heads onto polygons, fixing the polygon count, doing the motion capture and fixing the motion capture. It's like, man, it's like you can tell where that year and a half of development, because it's like that's a lot for one person to do. It's like those are all full. Yeah. It's like now it's like these days you have like entire teams of like a team of people working on one of those aspects, and it's like he did all of it. Yeah,
you have like a team of 500 people, and there's like one animation takes one person like 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, I know we've like referenced this before, but it's like who's the guy at Rockstar whose job it was to realistically animate the horse's balls.
Like it's it was actually 2 people, one for each ball. Oh my God. All right, that's a wrap.
Yeah. And so none of this could have been accomplished without the efforts of Mark Edmonds. He did many of the transitions between the recorded moves. A mathematician, Edmonds was a pro in blending, given the title its smoothness by incorporating quaternions? Quaternions?
I have no idea what the word is you're trying to say.
To account for all of the angles and rotations. Apparently, this was another technique not ever seen prior.
Oh my! Okay, I was like, oh, it's a technical jargon. Okay, yeah. Okay.
With that though, that tidbit, we are going to call it for tonight. Next episode will wrap up the second half of production and take us to GoldenEye's launch. So be sure to return. Thank you, guys, and thank you, listeners. Thank you, Elise. I know that ending was sort of sudden, but I wanted to try and split it into even parts.
I think,
there's plenty of interesting wackiness left in the story, take my word. But
there is the development really is split. I feel like split between the individual parts that we're talking about, the individual parts building it up, and then finally there is a second half because there's still
once the game comes off the rails. That's
and it's like it's
might as well be a whole.
It's like they had a couple late joiners. Notably Steve Ellis developing the multiplayer, and it was just like So I think there's a good point.
Multiplayer will also be.
I think there's a good break point.
Cool. And it goes without saying, I'm proud of us. This is our first episode in a while. So
you have been bearings there since you started this podcast. You brought up in your first set of scripts that you were developing, you were like, Matt, I want to do a GoldenEye episode.
I always knew this was an interesting tale for us.
Yeah, it was in the original pitch document.
It was.
Funny enough, the only thing that was put on the list first before GoldenEye is what we're doing
will be our
next.
100th episode. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Man, it's going to be so cathartic to get all this out. And we'll get to wax more poetic next week or 2 weeks. But Austin, Care to close the show out?
Shake off the rust.
Yeah.
I got to remember how to do this.
Because this might be someone's first episode.
It might be, yeah. Thank you for listening. We have numerous other episodes. As Randy mentioned, this is episode 97. And that's not including the commentaries and Game Awards ones and Game of the Year ones.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back and check out our old catalog, you can do that on hotbuttoncast.com. That's our website. Also, Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you get podcasts. And if you want to see what we're working on next, I'll probably post like a preview of what our 100th episode is going to be about.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
It's going to be a big event.
For that and the upcoming interview.
Yep. Check out the socials, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HotButtonCast.
Cool. All right. Good night, everybody.